Start off by dropping your comments, all the questions that you'd be having, and then the gentleman will help us, just think through as we get to look forward to see how best then the government as well as the Azimio team will handle these bipartisan talks, if there are going to be any that will be conducted, even as we cross fingers as well that we do not get to that moment of maandamano. But as Azimio would maintain, it is theirs to go back to the people in the event that the bipartisan talk do not, yield any form of threat or do not appear to have that political will. All this is what we'll be looking at. So karibu sana. Let's have you join us and interact with us. The hashtag is Morning Cafe at Linda_Lela TV47KE. I get to sample some of your comments as we continue with the broadcast. And as always, we have the Daily Nation, we have the Standard newspaper, and the People Daily, the papers that we'll be looking at this morning. Please walk me through all the way to 9:30 a.m. Later on, being a Wednesday, we're going to hit the kitchen. That is on Tasty Wednesday. We'll be having 30 minutes of preparing you the best of pork. It will be interesting to watch. I mean, you are used to that honey glazed one. This time around, we're doing it a bit different. I won't tell you what. Please make sure that you keep it right here. But even important is that we'll be looking into the SME world, the complaints that they have presented to the government, and what really is going on with the current government in terms of making sure that the SMEs then get that boost and also have favorable, spaces of, conducting business. So the Standard newspaper, as I have said, is what I have this morning, as well as the Daily Nation and the People Daily. Allow us to briefly look at what the front pages speak of before we get to a recap of the news stories that the editorial team of TV47 has worked on. And so here we are. Well, it looks like we haven't opened these ones yet, but not a problem. We should be able to. Yes, here we are. So a bit of a technical hitch here, not much of a problem. Let's use the hard copy for a moment before we get to fix that. And yes, the hard copies are here with me this morning. The politics of ICC, why it may all be just hot air. Politicians and the police boss have been issuing threats of going to the International Criminal Court at The Hague, but given the events surrounding the Azimio protest, it may not pass muster the court, and that is what we had as a conversation yesterday extensively. You can always get the details of the same on our social media platforms, but as well, we'll be just looking to unpack what really this then means and what the situation would look like at the Rome Statute, and of course, the grant ICC jurisdiction over 4 main crimes. This as presented by the Azimio team. Do they appear as those ones that would be willing to have a conversation that will resolve the stalemate in the country? Well, in such a case, then one is bound to question this, as the Azimio talks and are out there. Kalonzo Musyoka yesterday maintaining that they will not, focus on talks unless the team is expanded beyond that aspect of parliament, and they say should be extra parliamentary, because then we want to see other individuals, if it is the clergy, incorporated on this. And of course, we also have failure to crack down on gangs returns to bite. A report on criminal gangs and elections warns failure to rein in thugs associated with politicians with all precipitate violence. A story captured on the front page and expounded on page 10 and page 11 on a special report on the Standard newspaper. Just what informs these forms of gangs that again are politically instigated, and what needs to be done so that we solve this. And on this other side, Treasury now eyes Eurobond after failing to raise enough money in the local market. Government is mulling external lenders. A story captured on the business page on page 24 as well finds itself on the front page of these other papers. We'll be looking at that, and we need to understand what is the ramification of this. Are we in such a dire situation that we can't manage without debt? And in the event that we're lucky enough to get this debt, just what are the mechanisms set to make sure that we service the same, even as we make sure that the country stays afloat? Boston keeps producing rare winners. A story captured on the sports segment that is on page 37, 38 and 39. We'll be looking, and we have been looking at what it was like in terms of actions of athletes, Olympics athletics, and having our men and women representing us, of course, winning as well as others losing, but all in the spirit of taking the flag of Kenya to the world. Traders rush to clear maize stock as imports land. And even in all this, we ask ourselves, do we really have the subsidy, or do we really have the price of unga going down? This also is one of the things that we'll be looking at, as promised by the president. It's on Wednesday already. You go to the shelves, perhaps it does not speak of what exactly the president said, but we can only give them time, because as many would say, the day is still young, or the week then in this case is still young. The People Daily: Treasury seeks expert to guide on 162 billion euro bond quest. A story captured on page 15, basically what we have said on whether then we need to go this direction, what are the chances of getting that, and what are the chances of managing the debt or sustaining ourselves in the moment of that debt, and also not forgetting the numerous cases that have bedeviled the other, Eurobond loans that we actually took a while back. And 5 students perished in grisly Naivasha accident. As I have said, there are very many cases of accidents lately, and we ask ourselves what could be informing this. And so policemen are out there inspecting just to get to understand. Unfortunately, they lose their lives, and at the same time, there are others that are hurt extremely. And so we'll be carrying that story as well to give you more details on the same. Why reform talks face a major threat. Leaders disagree as Azimio boss Raila allies accuse their Kenya Kwanza rivals, that is, of failing to consult before writing to Speaker about a start of process. And former Governor Wairia is to host Odinga in Muranga. That is what we seek to see, whether then this will happen and what then will be the outcome of the same. And so they have also threatened to resume demos next week in the event that then these talks do not appear to carry a positive face. And so we'll be following up on that closely to make sure that you're updated. Has cost of unga gone down? Not well, everybody thinks so, and the prices remain high. Even a State House says that flour is now retailing at 150, well, down from 230. I don't know whether it's the case from wherever it is that you are, but just looking at the shelves, it does not look to be the same. And perhaps one that is the cheapest could be going for around 169 there. And so we'll be looking to see whether there's going to be any adjustments that will be done in these few days that are left. And debt headache as Kenya seeks a new Eurobond. As well, I've told you this is a story that finds itself across all the papers this morning. I will be looking to get the details of the same as we continue with the broadcast. 72 hours of road carnage. That also is quite unfortunate. Accident deaths in numbers, and as you can see, the numbers continue to shoot up. We've had people, 4 in Nakuru, Naivasha, Delamere, 2 in Muranga, and Taita Taveta 10 that have unfortunately also lost their lives. And we just ask ourselves, what do we need to do once again to address this? Yesterday, 6 students traveling home for the school holidays became the latest casualties on our roads. And of course, just hours after, 16 others lost their lives separately in Taita Taveta, that is Muranga, Nakuru, and the cabinet then directed the concerned players to curb the crashes. But must it always have to come to this for action to be taken? That's the question that is being asked on the Daily Nation. And on this other side, Raila rejects bipartisan talks by members of parliament. Azimio insists that it will only participate in process that is outside the House in a view of the structures of debate in parliament. Those are the key stories. Allow us to take a quick short break, and then we come back as well, look at what it is that my team has prepared.
Wakati mwingine kama weekend, mimi najiachilia.
Hata ukumbuki history.
Nikifika watu wangu wakinipokea na kupokeleka.
Umeset the mood.
Nimeset the mood. Naweza kupokeleka. Nikitumai kwamba mzima popote pale ulipo, nikikukaribisha katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi. Jina langu Elizabeth Mutuku. Katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi tunakupa nafasi kutangamana nao kila siku ya Alhamisi kuanzia saa 1:30 kuendelea Siku nyingine tutapatana papa hapa umjue kiongozi mwingine.
Jiunge nasi toka hapa hadi ufuoni mwa bahari. Meli yetu itakapotua nanga kwa uhondo ribo ya riwaya hii mwisho wa kosa. Monica.
It's early morning in Maralal. Start your morning informed, educated, entertained, and above all, know your country. From the beautiful plains of Samburu County to the skyscrapers of Nairobi, Morning Cafe certainly got you covered. Indeed, a beautiful place to watch and certainly a moment of understanding and knowing your country. Indeed, to the remotest parts of every county. Join me, Linda Alela, every weekday from 6 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
The diversity of Kenya's wildlife has garnered international fame.
This is pellets that we give to the tourists, the giraffes. We ration because we don't want the giraffes to eat too much of this. We want them to have more of the natural browse.
We may not always get the opportunity to go out to see the wildlife, but you'll never miss the opportunity to see it from the comfort of your couch.
This is home to animals that have been found out there either injured, abandoned, or confiscated from people who are holding them illegally.
Only on TV47 Wildlife, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m.
Disability is a club that anyone can join.
I live with special needs. It means I have a limitation. There are things I can't be able to do personally myself.
And in our journey to talk about disability, we tell the stories of those with disabilities and even sit with specialists to understand what it means for those affected directly and indirectly.
Everybody's life, mine has also been faced with ups and downs.
If it becomes a self-stigmatized thing where you feel like you are judging yourself too harsh, you blame yourself, and you perceive that it happened because you failed.
Join me, Zainab Mohammed, on Beyond the Limit every Saturday at 7:30 p.m.
An entrepreneur is defined as someone who has the ability and desire to establish, administer, and succeed in a startup venture along with the risks entitled to it to make profits.
I'm a professional financier with a professional paper in banking. However, for fashion, it's something I've always loved ever since I was small.
Started as a baby business. It was all about, you have your machines, the haircuts, wear the heads, bring the scalps.
We wanted something that would remind us about prayer every now and then. So the moment you mention Talit, you always think about prayer because Talit Cakes is founded on prayer.
Get to learn more about these entrepreneurs and what makes them stand out in their field every Monday at 6:30 p.m. only on The Grind.
Things like cocaine can cause extremely high pressures and it can cause damage to the kidneys.
Main reason why people get constipated is food.
If you lie down flat and you notice you're having some difficulty breathing, yes, that could also be a sign of heart disease.
When the car breaks down, it is taken to the mechanic. But when the human body breaks down, where is it taken? This is why the Body Garage exists. Join us every Thursday, 8 p.m. as we bring you health expert advice. And I'll be your host, Dr. Chepsi.
Wakati mwingine kama weekend, mimi najiachilia.
Hata ukumbuki hii story.
Nikifika watu wangu wakinipokea na kupokeleka.
Umeset the mood.
Nimeset the mood. Naweza kupokeleka. Nikitumai kwamba mzima popote pale ulipo, nikikukaribisha katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi. Jina langu Elizabeth Mtuku, na katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi tunakupa nafasi kutangamana nao kila siku ya Alhamisi kuanzia saa 1:30 kuendelea siku nyingine. Tutapatana papa hapa umjue kiongozi mwingine.
Jiunge nasi toka hapa hadi ufuoni mwa bahari. Meli yetu itakapotua nanga kwa uhondo ribo ya riwaya hii mwisho wa kosa. Monica.
It's early morning in Maralal. Start your morning informed, educated, entertained, and above all, know your country. From the beautiful plains of Samburu County to the skyscrapers of Nairobi, Morning Cafe certainly got you covered. Indeed, a beautiful place to watch and certainly a moment of understanding and knowing your country. Indeed, to the remotest parts of every county.
Join me, Linda Alela, every weekday from 6 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
The diversity of Kenya's wildlife has garnered international fame.
This is pellets that we give to the tourists, the giraffes. We ration because we don't want the giraffes to eat too much of this. We want them to have more of the natural browse.
We may not always get the opportunity to go out to see the wildlife, but you'll never miss the opportunity to see it from the comfort of your couch.
This is home to animals that have been found out there either injured, abandoned, or confiscated from people who are holding them illegally.
Only on TV 47 Wildlife, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m.
Disability is a club that anyone can join.
I live with special needs. It means I have a limitation. There are things I can't be able to do personally myself.
And in our journey to talk about disability, we tell the stories of those with disabilities and even sit with specialists to understand what it means for those affected directly and indirectly.
Welcome back to the broadcast, and we go straight to the stories of the day. The removal of Jubilee nominated Member of Parliament, that is Sabina Chege, as the Deputy Minority Whip, has elicited mixed reactions on whether then the former ruling party members exhibited the rule of law while they were joining or pledging allegiance to Kenya Kwanza. And Azimio coalition leaders have certainly since campaigned for Sabina's ouster, that indicating they shall not accept to be whipped by Azimio la Umoja non-member. Let's take a look at that.
I want to reiterate that yes, I am a member of Jubilee Party.
The push and pull between former Murang'a woman representative Sabina Chege and Azimio la Umoja coalition has opened a new debate on how political parties and individual members should terminate their relationship with their coalitions should the need arise. Last week, the nominated Member of Parliament indicated that Jubilee Party had initiated a process of detaching itself from the minority coalition and pushing for the former ruling party to be recognized as a parliamentary party. The Office of the Registrar of Political Parties last month ratified the Jubilee Party National Executive Committee changes that kicked out Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition-leaning officials from the party.
And there is no
depository of an exit that has been done by Jubilee Party with to the registrar, or there is no notification that has been issued that we now want to exit the coalition.
In what dealt a major blow to the larger Azimio coalition, the Registrar of Political Parties and Rito said the changes that saw 3 officials suspended were procedural. According to regulations set by the Azimio coalition, no member party is allowed to leave the coalition for at least a year after an election. The Azimio Alliance agreement also specifically stipulates that no party may withdraw from the coalition 6 months before the August 2022 election, or within 3 months after the date of the said general election. It further clarifies that should a member wish to leave, they can only do so after giving 90 days notice to the coalition council.
The indivisibility of the agreement and the respect that it requires, such that people will not just trash it as mere papers. It will have some legal consequences.
According to constitutional lawyer Degwa Jiro, the Political Parties Act bars individuals from shifting goalposts unless when they move with the parties they were elected with.
If you then so wish to resign from a coalition, you as an individual, you cannot exit that coalition. The political party must exit first from a coalition. And that's what we are saying. It can exit 3 months following an election. But an individual cannot exit from the coalition because the individual has been sponsored by the political party.
Last week, National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula notified the House that on April 6, he received a letter from Minority Leader Opiyo Wandayi on the decision of the Azimio coalition to remove Sabina Chege from the minority whip position. But Chege opposed the move, asking the Speaker to shelve the ruling on the changes to give more time for consensus reaching.
And Mr. Speaker, the standing order has no due process. And this is what the leader of minority is using to intimidate me to leave a position that was negotiated by my party.
My point is that my letter to you speaks for itself. It's in accordance with the standing orders. It's in accordance with the Constitution.
He says a coalition agreement also spells the disputes resolution mechanisms, procedures, enforcement and sanctions for breach of any of the provisions of the agreement.
To the extent that individuals in a political party want to coalesce or to coalesce or to gravitate towards coalescing with perhaps a party in power or a party that is not in power, the standard or the threshold is that the party itself must exit and not an individual. So all those individuals who went to or gravitated towards Kenya Kwanza after the elections, it is them who gravitated towards Kenya Kwanza and not the political party that sponsored them.
In what reduces the matter to an internal party affair, an agreement should also state the grounds upon which the coalition may be dissolved, including mechanisms and procedures to be followed. According to former Murang'a MP, the standing orders cited by Azimio la Umoja did not align with Article 47 of the Constitution on fair administration of action.
Because Article 27 says there is nobody who is above the law. We are all equal before the law, and we are entitled to equal protection and equal treatment before the law. So if a thief before condemnation requires to be taken to court, even Sabina requires a fair hearing.
And now, since the timelines rallied upon by larger Azimio la Umoja coalition on termination of agreements have lapsed, the Jubilee Party has already started legal procedures of exiting the Odinga-led coalition. This includes a 3-month notice done by the new team led by Secretary General Iyala MP Kanini Kega. Mike Kagwongo, TV 47, Nairobi.
Quite an extensive view of the same by Micah Gwongo. Will certainly be giving you the developments. The Azimio coalition has said it will not take part in the bipartisan parliamentary talks, insisting on talks outside parliament. Azimio's hardline stance comes ahead of a crucial meeting this Thursday involving parliamentary leadership and co-chairs of the negotiating team. And as Apollo Kamau reports, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Moses Wetangula, was forced to intervene following an attempt by Kenya Kwanza to table a motion to formalize the talks.
Ahead of a crucial icebreaker meeting on Thursday this week to unlock the bipartisan talk stalemate, the Azimio coalition stuck to its key demand, maintaining there will be no talks in parliament, but only through an expanded structure that mirrors the Serena talks that gave birth to the National Accord in 2008.
We have insisted on an extra-parliamentary process in view of the strictures of debate in Parliament. We will therefore not participate in any such parliamentary process.
A draft motion seeking to formalize the bipartisan talks was also rejected by Azimio, saying it was not consulted and for setting terms of reference for the talks. Azimio further saying Kenya Kwanza cannot dictate the agenda.
Kenya Kwanza cannot dictate to us what we cannot bring to the table. Our members of parliament in both houses shall not be party to any other process, and particularly not the one proposed in the motion by Kenya Kwanza.
With a stalemate threatening to scatter the talks, Speaker of the National Assembly Moses Wetangula directed the two sides to seek consensus first on the motion and the divisive issues before the motion seeking to give the process a roadmap is moved.
As you may be aware, honorable members, parliamentary practice requires that a motion of this nature be presented to the House upon negotiations and agreement between the majority and minority coalitions, so that what is finally presented to the House is harmonized by partisan motion.
Thursday's meeting, communicated in a letter by Majority Leader in the National Assembly Kimani Ichung'wah to the Clerk of the National Assembly Samuel Njoroge, seeks the venue of the crucial first meeting between the two sides in an effort to strike consensus ahead of the talks.
Before any motion can be brought before this House to set up or to set off this process of bipartisan engagement, there have to be talks about the talks.
About talks before the talks. And I agree with him because, as you have mentioned, such a motion, Honorable Speaker, can only come to establish this committee if we are agreed on the terms of reference and what the committee is going to look into.
The bipartisan forum, if it does take place, is expected to help the two sides achieve consensus on key sticky points before talks formally begin. Apol Kamau, TV47 at Parliament Buildings.
From politics to a rather unfortunate one, and the latest report from Sudan since heavy fighting erupted in its capital of Khartoum Saturday. Reports indicate that at least close to 200 civilians have been killed in the crossfire, while many others were wounded amid calls from the global community for a ceasefire. Already, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, has resolved to have the presidents of Kenya, South Sudan and Djibouti as soon as possible conduct reconciliation talks between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces. That being the case, Kenya is at the forefront in ensuring the stability of Sudan is restored. And of course, our very own Moige William interrogates why East Africa region's economic giant should be more concerned about the situation in Khartoum.
This is the current situation in Sudan. As the situation in Sudan has been getting dire, with more deaths and injuries being recorded of civilians caught in the crossfire between two forces armed with heavy military artillery, as they engage in a power struggle over who should control the country's leadership. Taking note of this situation, the global community has raised concerns over the situation in Khartoum, with Kenya being appointed to be part of the peace mission to Sudan. Even so, experts from Kenya have called for quick intervention on the situation, taking note of what Kenya as a nation stands to lose should it escalate. According to statistics by the United Nations Comtrade database on international trade, Kenya's exports to Sudan were valued at $65.98 million, and some of the leading products exported to Sudan include coffee, tea, and tobacco.
There's no country that lives alone. Can tell you for free. There are people from Sudan who are here, and we have Kenyans who are there. So that means that chain is broken. And if it gets broken, then that means we have no business.
If it goes on, of course, we'll see our trade being affected, a direct effect on the economy, and we know there are lots of security concerns or security ripple effects that come when an economy is battered or when the economy does not do very well.
Analysts pointing out that one of the main reasons President William Ruto is among the 3 presidents tasked by IGA to resolve the situation in Sudan is to look into not only the region's economic situation, but also Kenya's. Already flights frequenting Sudan's airspace en route to different destinations have been suspended by major airlines. Also, it is important to know that the Sudanese airspace is a critical route for planes in transit to Kenya from Europe.
And Kenya is part of the national trading bloc. And of course, this war, having jeopardized all that, stop of flights into Khartoum, restriction of the airspace used in South Sudan, in Sudan, that means a lot in terms of the amount of trade and volumes of business that might come to Kenya or might be stopped from coming to Kenya, which is a direct impact from this war.
It's in order for us to be able to go and sort out, help these 2 warring generals to just make sure that they agree, and at the end of the day, it does not bring bloodshed to civilians, because at the end of the day, the people who suffer are the civilians.
Kenya and Sudan also enjoy the exploitation of human resources, with the Kenya Ministry of Foreign Affairs announcing that more than 3,000 Kenyans are stranded in Sudan, but that the government is closely monitoring the situation and is ready to evacuate them. The government is also appealing to Kenyans who have not registered with the embassy in Khartoum to do so.
We are monitoring the situation, as I mentioned. The interagency team is looking at all of the different moving parts. As you might know, we are about 100 hours, no, maybe 72 hours in since the hostilities began. Yes, so it's a rapidly evolving situation, and you have to monitor as you put in place all of the different pieces of an evacuation plan and logistics that are required for that.
Violence broke out in Sudan on Saturday, following weeks of power struggles between Sudan's army chief Abdel Fattah and his deputy Mohamed Hamdan, who commands the powerful paramilitary group RSF. At least 100 people, including 3 UN officials, have since died and hundreds more injured. Mwigi William, TV47, Nairobi.
All right, and we now shift gears to the conversation. The gentleman here on standby, one of them is like 2-3 minutes away. We do not wait for him, but once he gets here, we'll as well get to loop in. And so as we get to this conversation, again, the lines are open for you to speak to us this morning. As always, the hashtag is Morning Cafe at Linda_Lela TV47KE. That is how you get to interact with us. We sample some of your comments as we continue with the broadcast. With us is Honorable Sunday Oyolo, who is a politician and equally the Kenya Kwanza coordinator of the Western region. And they seem to have done so well for the Kenya Kwanza team, for them to get the presidency and for once eating into Raila Odinga's vote, successfully delivering him alongside the likes of Papa Waroma and Madividi. Did quite a good job, perhaps impressing the president. And so we have him this morning to, first of all, get to know whether the Western region stands solid to the Kenya Kwanza team, as well as Meshach Odede. He was also the chairperson, that is, of VIO Society of Kenya. What does VIO do, Meshach?
Thank you, Linda, and we welcome our viewers wherever they are. VIO Society Kenya is a civil society organization, some umbrella body of member organizations working in development programs, mostly working with volunteers like the United Nations volunteers, the Kenya Red Cross, the VSO, and many, many others. So we work purely on development programs because volunteering cuts across in the sectors like health. We both know how the community health volunteers work across the country. In education sector, we know the contribution of volunteer teachers and others. Children's department, our offices are actually housed by the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, where children's department is, because they appreciate how volunteer groups across the country are contributing to the development agenda, including the SDGs and others.
And that's a beautiful thing, but allow us to briefly weigh in on that. For the longest of time and across Africa, there's been fears of, the NGOs, there's been fears of, the entities, we could call them the civil rights entities, because then first of all, they're doing a good job in terms of, helping in the developmental projects, but also, sometimes they get in there to look into the rights of the people, especially when governments are not, performing their duties as expected. But equally, they have been blamed of infiltrating and sometimes, triggering unnecessary concerns or triggering unnecessary feuds, court cases in and out. Some of them have been looked at as not being legit, but they function across Africa ably. What would you make of that?
Linda, one thing that Africa has missed largely, and Kenya being part of Africa, is that most of the professional groups are deemed not to be part of the political conversations and political ongoings in a country. So, for example, in my space as the chairperson of this umbrella body of the network, many people would not be very comfortable or would be asking, why would you take a political stand on something? When it is association of doctors, teachers, and everybody, people think they shouldn't be part of the ongoings politically. But again, these are the people who makes the country. So if you exclude them in any political conversation, then we leave that space for politicians alone, and that is why by the time things go wrong, everybody beef or blames the politicians.
And really that we do not dispute, and I think let's loop in Sandy on that very note. The acknowledgement of the importance of NGOs as well as the civil rights entities or civil society is very, very important, and we have also seen how many countries have also successfully managed to even deal with their political instability, courtesy of the hand of the civil society, courtesy of the hand of the NGOs. But equally, these talks that are now here and they are right. If you go to a country like South Africa, they'll tell you there are very many NGOs, 1,000 and so, and then you ask yourself, just how genuine are all of them? Ama kuna ile ambayo unasikia na zibovu Arabu ya nzima.
Thank you very much, Linda, for having me today. Many don't know that I actually, or maybe forget, that my background is in civil society, even myself.
Yeah.
And civil society has had a big role in this country. In the 80s, 90s, actually, the civil society played a major role, even in what we call the second liberation of this country. It's unfortunate that with time it has been relegated to an individual and persons and thinking about, but it was actually the civil society, an organized civil society. We had the NCC, we had the CRECO. I was myself a program officer at CRECO. We had the youth agenda, where the likes of Akina Cecily Mbarire, the Captain Mbati, Danny Rungu, and many other people that were there, or even Robert Alai, and we were all in the youth agenda. We had the 4 C's of Paddy Onyango and others. We had, all of us were students of Kivuza Kibwana and Mutunga, the CJ. And the work that we did then in the civil society, even in the change of the constitution, the change of Section 2A in 1990, 1991, early 1990s, that work was a lot of work. Even by then, Kenya was also under a lot of economic constraints. And we remember, actually, the NGO used to run this country. All the children organizations, all the schools were run by the NGOs. Back in the northern Kenya, the whole county province was actually run by the civil society, by the NGOs, because we had the Red Cross, we had all these volunteer organizations that used to bring in food and donations and what have you. all of it was run by the civil society. So come 2002, after 2002 election, most of the civil society big names transited into government, and into the CJ Mutunga became Kawikibwana, the late Kalembe, all of us, most of us who are now in the civil society, got into the government because the late President Kibwana and Kibaki appreciated the role that the civil society players, so they came in with the government. But then again, there came the problem because now
then they ceased to address.
Correct.
Yes.
So those who remained in the civil society were not so strong, and civil societies became weak. And around the same time now, the donor also, there was no much need for donor money, because even the detention, like for example, we used to have the free the prisoners.
Yes.
There was no longer that. There were no detainees, and there were a lot of liberal rights. And then come 2010, the new constitution, the most liberal constitution ever in the world, as it was dubbed. There were no civil rights constraints by the government. So that's how now the civil society came down and down and down. But again now, for me, even today, as they seek to invent themselves, the problem has been civil society have decided to be so partisan. Like the civil society we have today is not the civil society we had. Civil society we had then could hit at the opposition and the government in equal measure. They would tell the Ford then and the DP then, Democratic Party, that you are wrong. And they would tell the government of Moi, you are wrong. Today's civil society is so partisan. So partisan, they think if they speak what the opposition is saying, then they will be more popular. Or many of them are wishing that if the opposition comes into government, then they'll get jobs, just the way Akira Mutunga get jobs. So most of them are got jobs. So most of them are on shop hunting.
Now
hunting.
That really is quite unfortunate. And even beyond that, Meshach, we want to ask this, and not to paint the civil society as well as the NGOs, I think one and the same in terms of the operations that they conduct, not to paint them in a bad picture. But equally, this, in as much as it brings lots of benefits to the people in terms of projects like you rightfully put, it looks like they are acts of the big brother. And therefore then it's a clear indication that as a people, and I am keen on looking at Africa at large, we then are going to forever depend on donors. We are going to, forever depend on foreign debts, and they are going to run the show for us. Up until when? Can't we just have a formation of civil society that is within us without depending on donor funding, in that when they now come to fund, that they want to call the shots? And perhaps that is why Sunday then says that they become partisan, because then there's the interest of the bigger brother who will tell you at this point then we dance with the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, or at this point we dance with Kenya Kwanza, and therefore you have no choice as well, because, well, they're funding the entire projects.
Linda, you're right. There's one thing in the space we occupy as civil society that needs to, I would call it, we need to decolonize part of the civil society movement, because the funding aspect of our programs has always been dictated largely by the funding partners. You realize a partner comes and says, we have money for this specific thing, and then that money comes alongside with the note with conditions on where to spend it, how to spend it, and what to spend it on, and things like that. Sometimes it is not really matching the expectation of the community or the expectation of the country, but it matches more of the expectation of the funding partner and what they want to achieve at the end of the day. So to move out of this, then it brings the political aspect. We need to build our countries in Africa. Our corporates need to come in and be part of the funding partners that we have. Because if we have, for example, a funding partner which is a corporate in Kenya, definitely their expectation of the funding would match the expectation of a community, because they work in the same community, they benefit from the same population. So definitely they would expect the same thing with the implementing partner, which is an organization. But if you get a funding from the US, Europe, or wherever, what the Europeans are expecting might be completely opposite what the community is expecting. But because the funding is theirs, you must go with their terms to get the funding. So I think the only way is coming back to our politics. We need to develop our own countries to a level where our corporates can fund the organizations and implement programs and complement the development agenda that government, because usually NGOs are just supposed to be partners to the government in whatever development agenda that a government in place has put forward. Then organizations are coming in to support that agenda. Organizations don't set up their own development program in a country. Government sets up the agenda and partners come to support. So the government needs to lead the agenda. The organizations need to come and implement in terms of support, technical and otherwise. Corporates and other funding agencies needs to support with resources to do that. But now our problem is the corporate in Kenya have not mastered the art of funding organizations to support. What they do is simply put some money aside and call it corporate social responsibility, and they are used to this thing of going once and donating things, and then they do a lot of PR on it and say this has been done by this corporate and that is it. So they do not sit down and do a long-term program, but we have to give it to some of them like Safaricom Foundation, which is now having a good and a whole big structure where they fund you in a program that is sustainable, long-term and everything like that. So yes, you're right. Somehow the civil society space has been a place where we sometimes don't achieve what the particular country we are working in needs, but we achieve mostly what the funding partner actually wants. And so that is why most of the civil society now lean towards politics so much. But again, the fact that the initial members of the civil society worked hard and achieved a few things, some of them also went into the government and dirtied their hands. Then the voices completely went off. So they are in politics, but they can't really speak the same way they spoke in the 90s. They can't speak the same way they spoke in the 80s because they have already jumped in and dirtied their hands. And so they are just looking and they're like, I think it's becoming normal to run the country this way. So lately, again, the country is now more political than it was in those other days. In those other days, even the media space was not available as it is today. So a lot of things may have gone wrong or right, but nobody actually brought them to the limelight to the extent that right now anything happens, even a small thing in a small office in government, and it is all over social media. It wasn't the same in the 90s and in the 80s. So in the 80s, we depended on these individuals to tell us what is going on in government. But now the space has been overtaken by media, and thanks to the people who fought for the new constitution, because it gave media a big range of space. And that space is not just in the mainstream media, but also in the social media and other platforms. So Kenyans nowadays know where the president sleeps and where the president wakes up. In those days, we would wait for lunchtime news to hear Mtukufu Rais Moi leo alishiriki AIC Kabarak, and then that's when we will know where Moi is. So we have to appreciate that the role of civil society then could not be the same as today because other aspects have also come. Things like open governance was never there.
Yeah.
Government offices alone were even structured in a way that access to those offices were almost impossible.
Yeah.
Today, all government offices are somehow out like this. People are working on partition, and you can see from the end to the end. Those other days, the office of the boss could be closed and even locked. So you don't actually know what the boss is doing inside there. So things like that have changed a lot of things.
That's true.
So it is the organizations to also change to match what is new.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if they remain the same, they lose their relevance.
And that is where the problem is, because going forward, the civil society must again reinvent, but most of them have stuck with time.
Yeah.
And most of the players are at the back are the same players, and they are being overtaken by events. Like, for example, the funding now that the NGOs used to get. We used to get a lot of funding from foreigners and foreign agencies, but right now they are competing with government. Most of the government, like open office and open space, most of the government funded programs are funded by the organizations that used to fund the NGOs.
Yes. So at this point, they're funding government and at the same time the NGO.
So, and where would you put your money? Would you put it in the NGO that is going to seek government approval, or would you fund the government that does it?
Get the approval straight on.
That is, and then the other thing, even on conditions, you see conditions like that, like now the LGBTQ.
Yes.
You either do this or you don't get the money.
Allow us to take a quick short break and then come back on that very note, because it's quite important that we look at it also, acknowledging the fact that the civil society offers itself as the alternative voice, as the voice of the people. Do they still speak for the people? And of course that as well will lead us to the bipartisan talks, where then we are asking ourselves, do we need an alternative dispute resolution, or we stick to that? After this break, gentlemen.
Wakati mwingine kama weekend, mimi najiachilia.
Hata ukumbuki hii story. Nikifika watu wangu watu wakinipokea na kupokeleka.
Umeset the mood.
Nimeset the mood. Naweza kupokeleka. Nikitumai kwamba mzima popote pale ulipo, nikikukaribisha katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi. Jina langu Elizabeth Mtuku, na katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi tunakupa nafasi kutangamana nao kila siku ya Alhamisi kuanzia saa 1:30 kuendelea siku nyingine. Tutapatana papa hapa umjue kiongozi mwingine.
Jiunge nasi toka hapa hadi ufuoni mwa bahari. Meli yetu itakapotua nanga kwa uhondo ribo ya riwaya hii Mwisho wa Kosa. Monica.
It's early morning in Maralal. Start your morning informed, educated, entertained, and above all, know your country. From the beautiful plains of Samburu County to the skyscrapers of Nairobi, Morning Cafe certainly got you covered. Indeed, a beautiful place to watch, and certainly a moment of understanding and knowing your country. Indeed, to the remotest parts of every county. Join me, Linda Alela, every weekday from 6 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
The diversity of Kenya's wildlife has garnered international fame.
This is pellets that we give to the tourists, the giraffes. We ration because we don't want the giraffes to eat too much of this. We want them to have more of the natural browse.
We may not always get the opportunity to go out to see the wildlife, but you'll never miss the opportunity to see it from the comfort of your couch.
This is home to animals that have been found out there either injured, abandoned, or confiscated from people who are holding them illegally.
Only on TV47 Wildlife, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m.
Disability is a club that anyone can join.
I live with special needs. It means I have a limitation. There are things I can't be able to do personally myself.
And in our journey to talk about disability, we tell the stories of those with disabilities and even sit with specialists to understand what it means for those affected directly and indirectly.
Everybody's life, mine has also been faced with ups and downs.
If it becomes a self-stigmatized thing where you feel like you are judging yourself too harsh, you blame yourself, and you perceive that it happened because you failed.
Join me, Zainab Mohammed, on Beyond the Limit.
Governance expert, thank you so much for creating time as well to be here with us this morning. We are delighted to have you as we look at what is happening in the country. I was engaging the gentleman on the involvement of civil society, talk of the NGO in the country and the donor funding and how much they would call the shots. Senior, I cut you short when you're talking about the conditions that come along with this form of funding in the name of development.
Yeah, I was saying one, the problem is competition for funding. NGOs and civil society is suffering that because most of the funders would rather go direct to government for quick implementation. So that is kind of like squeezing the civil society out of the space of funding. But secondly, the conditions that go with the funding, like for example, most of the funding agencies that are available would put conditionalities. One of the conditions that is now prevailing is the issue of LGBTQ.
Yeah.
They will tell you you have to allow this. If you don't, then we won't give you funds. So that is also becoming a problem, a threat. And going forward, I would think civil society should, like you said, most of them have stuck in time.
Yeah.
They still want to do the 90s, 80s kind of formation, which is not working. They should now reinvent themselves into some new paradigm. Like for example, right now, during our days in the 90s, we decided to take a space. We decided the politicians are on that side and we are on this side with the people. But right now, most of the civil society are struggling to share space with the politicians.
Yeah.
So that's why you are finding them mostly talking. Like when you see a civil society speak, guy speak, you almost see Azimio, you see Raila, you see them. Even media is civil society.
Is it?
Because media is also civil society. And during our time, media was independent and would hit the politicals and others.
Are you saying the donors and the funders are serving or are funding the media?
No, well, maybe.
Why would they? Why would they take that?
Because of if they have an agenda that they want to pursue, they will do that. And we are saying civil society should take that non-partisan stand and say, like right now, we are needing a third voice. We are saying, Azimio is saying, Kenya Kwanza is saying, what are we saying?
We have seen the civil society appearing as though they are the alternative voice, and that is what they have.
At the moment, they haven't, Linda. If you look at what the civil society is saying today, if you go around and listen to their press conferences, they are actually amplifying the press statement from Serena.
What is wrong? What is wrong in them saying that even as you're having this bipartisan talk, kindly involve us because then we are also keen on seeing a stable country.
I can actually give a very good example before my brother. For example, we are talking about demonstrations.
Yeah.
And the demonstrations are anchored in we talk about the chapter 37 and what have you, article 37 and all, that gives a. Have we ever thought about why the police would now get involved, especially if the politicians threaten the institutions of governance, like saying we are marching to state house. That in particular, we are not talking about. Let's just when they were going to Kamkunji the other day, who followed them? They had the whole day. Who was? But when you start threatening the structures and institutions of government and say, have we had civil society come out and say, allow them to do the demonstration, allow them to do, but one, do not spoil people's things, do not threaten children going to school, do not go to the march to the State House because you are threatening government institutions, because then the police have to come in to protect.
How loud should they be for people to acknowledge that they have been saying that? Because I think I have had representatives of the civil society on set a couple of times, and they have alluded to that fact that we appreciate Article 37 of the Constitution. You are allowed to picket, but then let us consider the rights of the people, that yours and where mine begin. Let us not destroy property. And I think we've had all this.
Well, the question that we beg is that, do we actually have an active, well-structured civil society in the country?
How can you ask that?
It doesn't matter whether I've said active, well-structured civil society that is not biased or leaning to either side.
Yeah.
Because as a civil society, you are supposed to bring what is called an alternative. I'll tell you, if it was not for the civil society, we would not have midwife to the constitution that we have today. That's the truth.
Yeah, give it to them.
Give it to them. Mufungamano initiative and all those other initiatives. Because these are the people who brought the left and the right to the center so that we can agree and have a constitution. But today, we have a civil society that it will either be inclined to government or it will be inclined to opposition.
But what if they feel that what it is that the government is doing is right? What if they feel that what it is the opposition is doing is right? Are they not?
You see, as a civil society, let me tell you, as a civil society, there is no way a government will always be 100% right.
No.
Okay.
That take it to the bank. So, a civil society that is structured and not biased, as much as they support what government is doing good, it is also their responsibility to point out that the government is missing in this and this. I'll give you an example. If we had civil societies that were education-based, because civil societies are for so many things. There are civil societies that will deal with health matters, human rights, education. Today, have you ever had a civil society come out and critique how we are implementing the new education system? Which, as much as we support government, we cannot fail to deny that those people who started it messed. Because this government found a messed system. It is their responsibility to clean the mess, but it is also the responsibility of civil society to keep pushing the government to do the right thing quickly and in time. But you have not had any civil society come out and talk about it. Number two, we have seen the protests all over the city. Maybe the police could be accused of mishandling one thing or that or the other here and there. The demonstrators could be accused of targeting government installation, which is against the constitution, because the Bill of Rights that provides them that right to picket and demonstrate has a limitation up to where your right goes. But you have not seen any civil society come to either critique the police or critique the protesters. Now that is where the problem is, because the reason why so many international organizations came in those days, they were picketing about the constitution and clamor for change of our laws, it is because they saw a civil society that was driven by passion for change. If you look at the former Reverend Joya, Getale, Munge, all those people, they were very passionate, moving. And then I will tell you, when the civil society is well structured, you can trust that the voice of the church always rallies behind those civil society, because one of the voices that amplified the civil society then was the church. Amplified. You can hear the names we are talking about. These were people are like Ndiki Mwana Wanze who come and give a position on the church on some issues here and there. So
they've also had a very painful story
let's tell you,
that.
and I agree with him.
Yes.
The civil society today has become so political that it will lose its meaning. I will tell you, when I got into issues of leadership and government, I was introduced by a former politician from my area, Limuru, called Mwaura, to the Constitutional Review Commission of Yash Palgai. He was part of a civil society that would pick those guys they see in high school. You know Mwaura?
Yes.
Mwaura picked me from high school because he would listen
felt
how
like,
I
yeah.
expected and told me, Mushendo, as much as you are not a member of the commission, I will speak with the people so that you can be appearing in bombers and listen to what they have to say. That is how I got interested to know how a constitutional process is done. So if you have an active and a well-structured civil society, Rinda, today, even young people will aspire to be part of that civil society. They will neither pick government or pick opposition. They want to pick the position of the truth and stand for the people. That is what the civil society must do today, so that it can regain its glory. Because I will tell you, if it was not for civil society, as I've said again, this country will not be where it is. The people like Raila Odinga and Matiba and all those people that were clamoring for change, they were rallying on the back of the civil society.
Theirs has been a painful story, and we are closing on this one. And I am glad you mentioned the Joyas of today, the Matibas of today, the Railas of today. They will come. If you go to Reverend Joyas, and I have sat with them or with him and listened to his story and the memories that he had, you know, the bullets that, you know, the rubber bullets that he keeps dearly and says, this one hit me at this very point. Perhaps then it appeared as though they had a fight with government, and sometimes it was hard for them to operate. Could that have informed the kind of change that we witness today, that you have to dance the tune of the donor, dance the tune of the government, sometimes dance the tune of the politician, so that you're able to survive? Because beyond, you know, advocating and championing for the rights of the people, you're a human being.
Let me tell you, Linda, I differ from the position that civil society is wrong now and were right then. That's not a position
and I think you've alluded to the fact
that's not a position I want to take. The only change here is that my two brothers were in the opposition then.
Yes.
And so because civil society was supporting the same agenda, civil society were right. Good. Now they feel like they are more in government. Civil society is not supposed to support opposition anymore, or the agendas opposition are advancing. That means now civil society is speaking like politicians. Nothing has changed except them. Their views have changed, which is allowed, which is very much allowed, because there is no position for civil society. The players here is government and the opposition. And the two takes position. Civil society, including church and all that, looks at the two positions and looks at the constitution and says, this group is right. So they support the group which is, if government is right on this particular agenda, then they support. If government is wrong on that particular agenda, they support the opposite side. So there is no position for civil society that you and us. There is nothing like the players. The whole thing is politics. And when it is politics and we say we want, for example, constitutional amendments to open the space, for example, when the clamor was happening, things like media space was part of the main agenda. So if the civil society noticed that this group are championing for open space for media, for example, and the government is feeling like open space for media will show bad things that we do in government. And so government then during President Moi says we cannot allow that. And this group says we must have a space for media. If civil society came, they just needed to decide between those two factions which one is right, and they supported what was right. The same thing is what civil society will do today. So the only person who has changed are the two brothers who then were in the different camp, which is not government, and now they are feeling like they are in government and civil society is no longer supposed to take position with opposition on what they think opposition is right on. So we must discern that. Then lastly, what was then was, I mean, in the government then, the government had problems because, of course, they are also part of geopolitics in this. The Western world have always wanted to put their hands on any government in Africa, for example. And so by then, they would easily work with opposition to push some of the agendas and have government implement them. We are talking about democracy, governance, what. We must appreciate that we, in the earlier days, Africa had what we term, quote unquote, dictatorship governments across, which means most of those governments were taken almost forcefully from the colonial masters. Even though we did not literally fight and won the battle on account of fight, but antagonizing and becoming so ungovernable. We cannot say, because I hear people say, oh, my Mau fought for independence and all. I am simply saying there could never be Mau winning with stones against guns. It was never possible. But because they made it a bit uncomfortable for the whites, so they say, let's leave these guys. But those guys did not leave because they were overpowered by war. They left because they wanted to make us feel comfortable that we are ruling ourselves, while in the inside they wanted to still rule us, and they are still ruling us until today.
Hence the conversation of neo-colonialism.
Don't allow that.
Just a moment. I am a bit uncomfortable when Odede tries to dilute the very thing the Mau Mau people did. And I invite him to read the story of one of the colonial governors in Kenya called Sir Everin Bare, and you would understand why they left this country. So do not, for any moment, dilute that history. We can discuss that another day, but it cannot be that he cannot approach that history. I am very passionate about our history. I am a student of history. I understand it. They may have guns, but let me tell you, we won what is called a psychological war, and that was very important for us. So let us hear. Number two, I would want to correct him. I voted my first election. I voted in 2002, and I can promise you, from 2002 to date, I've never been part of any opposition. So when I approach the issue of civil society, it is not because...
It's not because you are you're the other side.
But the truth of the matter is, Linda, because you are a journalist, you appreciate the history of our civil society. Today, with all honesty, show us the civil societies that are being had in this country, doing what is it that the civil societies are supposed to do. I am very ready to be proved wrong.
Okay,
because the civil societies, when they were very serious about issues, we saw them. We did not need to be told what is an Ufungamano initiative. We would hear what Kina Jeru Gadhango, Kina former Kivuza Kibwana governor and the NC, what do you call it, the NCCK Secretary General Mutava Musimi would come out and talk about as a civil society. Today, I want to be told, other than how you will hear the Catholic Church coming out to give its position on the issue, and which are these civil societies Odede is trying to defend here that are doing a job that we can actually identify.
And to play the devil's advocate, while he is defending, well, at some point in time, he's also acknowledged that there's more that needs to be done in that very space. That is before you came in. So, Senior, we have to close on this one because it wasn't the subject of the day.
The statement that we must refuse is that Mau Mau didn't play a role. Actually, I even differ with my brother, thinking that it was only psychological. No. People fought. There were guns. People went to detention. 7 years, many years. People paid by blood. Even some of the Mau Mau fighters, the families, are still paying now. They are the squatters in Madare and many other places where they don't have even land.
He cannot equate Mau Mau with Majimaji rebellion in Tanzania.
Mau Mau fight in Kenya won as independence. It could have delayed independence like in South Africa, like in Zimbabwe, if we didn't have Mau Mau that was active and working. And that's why when Rigathi says he's a son of a Mau Mau or a product of a Mau Mau, we must know what it means. They did not get the chunks of land that the other people got, because when they came out of Mau Mau, they were thrown into Njoro and the Rift Valley is where when clashes happen like this, they suffer.
We still have the descendants. Do you suppose this government? Yes.
Who actually did that? Who threw them?
The collaborators. And the collaborators, then we have them, even the sons of the sons of collaborators are the owners of some land that we know. Now, for example, I wanted to say,
Senior, let's close on this one.
As I close, the civil society today are not the conscience of the nation. The civil society used to be the conscience of the nation. They used to be at the middle. By the way, you would see Ndingi Mwana and Zeki with Moi in charge today, but tomorrow criticize Moi. You get? And we want them to be that one. Secondly, the civil society today, actually, by the way, they don't know even, they are threatened. In this debate for the reconstitution of the selection committee, the government, the Kenya Kwanza government, in parliament, using the constitution that is progressive of 2010, are saying, let's obey the court ruling. There is a court ruling that said the parliament alone cannot arrogate themselves the role of a selection panel. So they are saying, let's they expand the panel to include the civil society, the church, the ward, and they have given out all the positions. These other guys in the Kenya Kwanza are saying, and I heard even Honorable Senator Osozi saying it, that the politics should be left to players only. Why? Because we are the owners of politics.
Okay.
So they are saying, the employers, the Public Service Commission, punguza the churches, there are too many. Punguza the LSK. I would have thought the LSK should go to court and say we also have a role in this and our position must remain. You know now they are conflicted. We are actually, it is the government now defending the civil society on the panel. And it is the politicians, especially the Kenya Kwanza, the Azimio are saying, no, tugawane hii kitu. 50-50, the Azimio 50, the Kenya Kwanza 50. Where are we? In fact, if you listen to to Bishop Muheria of
Anthony,
you will see a conflicted civil society. Because our bishop, the good bishop, when Uhuru was in government, he used to dine at State House every day. In fact, he used to lead the prayers. The same prayers. Yes. The other day, Bishop Muheria castigates prayers.
It's a bit
because it is conflicting.
But is it not okay? Well,
and Sapit is on your side all the time.
So it's clearly
all the time.
Sapit says that this country was built on prayers. So let's continue the prayers. But Muheria says, because I'm not part of that prayer, and I was part of the other prayer, it is bad prayer.
But don't we need to get to a space where...
And do you want to be reminded what Sapit said that time?
At that time.
You want to be reminded?
Okay, well,
or deliberately,
we do not
you are
get
forgetting.
there, and not to castigate Muheria.
I won't really...
And we're not getting into that.
Yeah, we will not really get into
that. If it gets there, you won't really want it to be talked about. Then let's move to another thing.
The bottom line is not
because I have them as well. I can remind my brothers what Sapit used to be and what Sapit is
by the way,
today. Just the same way.
My brother Odede wants a reminder. It is Ole Sapit who said, we don't want the Kenya Kwanza. Then you are calling them Tangatanga. In the pulpit.
In the pulpit, yes. That one.
So he was right then. He's right now.
Okay, fair enough. But then again, we have a lot of politics in church today, gentlemen. Beyond the bipartisan talks, the road carnage in the country, the fact that we're now angling for another Eurobond, and so much that is playing. I don't know whether you've been lucky enough to get Unga at 150.
Actually, 147.
I
have the photos here. I have the photos here from Naiva supermarket in Limuru. I'm buying Unga at 147.
So can we
trust you me?
Let's drop
you see, I had a discussion about the same thing yesterday.
Yeah.
when the president announced this, I was just alongside him at Gashie when he was commissioning a road there. And I was with him there, in fact, just next to his car. He said, from next week, and I wish you people can play that speech.
Yes.
We will gradually start seeing the UNGA coming down.
To 150 and even less.
And
That's
even less.
what he
Now,
said.
this is the interesting thing. Some of the media houses were in the supermarket at 8 a.m. yesterday morning. That was on Monday. Supermarkets have not even opened. They have not even started receiving the consignment. And you had
so we expect for this
and you had media houses reporting live, UNGA is still 200. Then the question begs, if the supermarket got
this is a president's decree and a declaration, you almost feel like, you know, it should be always.
If the supermarket had gotten a supply at the high cost last week,
it is only
the
fair
logical is that they will clear that stock with the same cost and start receiving that money. Then number two, when the government imported was it 48,000 metric tons, if I'm not mistaken, the nini that came.
About 16,000.
Yes. The millers were invited to come and uptake that product so that they can start processing. A number of notorious millers who actually defrauded this country over 4 billion that they were given by Uhuru never to bring the 100 shillings UNGA in our stores are some of the millers that refused to uptake the maize that was brought. So they want to maintain their products at the same cost because they refused. They were invited by the Minister of Agriculture, or I think about 57 millers, to come and uptake part of that maize that has come at a cheaper cost so that they can produce some cheap UNGA. They refused. Then, again, the media, when covering, they were sticking into these brands of UNGA whose millers have refused to uptake the cheap maize that has come. So this is the challenge I have for the media.
What is wrong with just reporting what is on the shelves
you
and looking at next week and to ask next week began on Sunday?
The reason why, Linda, when you get to a hospital here in Nairobi, the doctor will tell you go and have a CT scan, go to the laboratory, get this. It is because that doctor wants to get to the root cause of the symptoms you have right now. But have I seen the media get to the root cause of why we are here at the cost of living? The truth of the matter is, when the Jubilee government was in power, there was issues with bad weather, which was beyond them. But what was not beyond the Jubilee government was the National Cereals Board to be buying cereals from outside to cover the deficit that would come with bad weather. Because this is not the first, neither the second, neither the third. This country has had a shortage of cereals, especially maize. There was a time we were affected with aflatoxin. The NCPB saved the situation because it opened their silos so that millers could get maize that is not toxicated to be able to give us UNGA in cheap cost. But when we realized that we do not have enough harvest, the NCPB reserves, strategic reserve, had nothing rendered. The truth of the matter, I will tell you, even if the NCPB was to uptake all the maize planted and harvested in this country, we would still have a deficit of 720,000 metric tons. So it is the work of the NCPB to cover the deficit by getting maize either from Uganda, South Africa, Mozambique, or in Congo. But the NCPB, we don't have harvest, we don't have a bumper harvest. NCPB never saw the need to go and buy maize. It is the reason why we are here today. And when I see the media houses reporting UNGA has not gone down.
But equally acknowledging these prospects that you speak about, that yes, of course it could be out, this is stock that should be cleared and all that.
Yes, so I would want to have the conversation on the cost of UNGA tomorrow or the day after tomorrow on Friday, that supermarket you guys went in the morning yesterday and found a 200 and something UNGA, go back on Friday because the president had promised this week and find out has this UNGA drastically gone down. Then if it will not have gone down, then we can have a discussion around whether was the president right.
Meshach, do we close it at that point?
Linda, we do not want to misrepresent facts.
Yeah.
And I think there is nothing wrong the media did with reporting the true picture on the ground. When the president said last week, Kwamba, from next week you will start seeing these prices of UNGA goes down. whether he meant it or not is not the problem. The problem is when he said that, the media covered that and reported exactly.
Yes.
So the media is doing their work following next week to report what exactly is on the ground.
Yeah.
Why didn't Mushendu and other people from Kenya Kwanza find it uncomfortable that media reported exactly what the president said? No, wait, I was quiet when you were speaking. I don't know what is wrong with you. I mean,
let's allow him to
unless you are not a
case.
literature student.
No.
The speech by the
So are you the one
was
to judge
the speech by the president was phrased in a present continuous tense. It is something that gradually changes.
Mushendu going by the fact, I don't know whether you are in a position to teach me English. I don't know. That can be judged later. But let's go to the debate now, because I come from a place where we speak English more than any other language. So you are not going to be in a position to teach me English.
Literature.
That is not possible.
Okay.
Has never been possible.
Will never.
Where I come from, even the old grandmamas speak better English than a young Kikuyu in Mushendu's backyard. So let's just move
that's extreme,
to the debate.
At that point,
Because if you want literature,
let me tell you, as much as I agree you may speak better English,
I am going back to the debate.
is also very dangerous.
I am going back to the debate. So when the media reported exactly what the president said, there was no problem. Now, when the media follows up that report they made to Kenyans, that the president said by next week, things will change this way. Now we are here at the supermarket to see if what the president said and what we reported to Kenyans is actually true. Now they have a problem with that. The same media reported that there are 2 brands of unga that are actually at 159, 160 there. That portrays the change that the president actually talked about. Why are they not having that in also their conversation? The media reported that the 2 brands are actually in conformity with what the president said. But there are these many other brands which are not in conformity. That is where the conversation is. But they want to sideline what the media actually reported, which is conforming to the president's speech, and they want to pick this other one because they have their beef with particular media houses from the time of campaign. It is time you are in government. You need to move away from this so-called media is biased on us. Let the media do their work. The media reported very well that the 2 brands are actually conforming. Now the question we need to discuss here, Now the question we need to discuss here is, why are those 2 specific brands conforming while the rest, which are many, we are talking about 57
and the argument
millers.
cannot be conforming because
57 millers. How comes this one have got already the cheap maize and are already on the shelf, while the rest have not put anything cheap on the shelf? Is it because the government did not allocate quotas to other millers, or they allocated but the millers have refused?
Or is it
That's the conversation we are supposed to have. Not, media is biased on us, media is biased on us. That's not a conversation.
He's coming to the point just as he comes to the senior.
And Linia, Senior, I'll expect for you to respond to this. Collins Kiprono says, it is well that unga would go down, but why is it that then the price of electricity shoots up, the price anashangaa hata ya chumvi.
Everything is going up while unga is coming down.
It's something that we've not seen, and I know Moshedu you want to say something, but let's just allow Senior to say something and we'll come back to you.
First of all, I want to agree with Brother Mushendu that there was selective media reportage. The president said from next week. So
Monday is not next week.
From next week.
I don't know how Kenya Kwanza argues.
It means.
So from next week is Monday is still last week.
No, I was quiet.
Okay.
From next week, meaning it was progressive.
Okay.
So it is. It cannot be. Monday cannot be the only next week.
But then again, I said, Senior,
and Monday must also be next week.
There's that acknowledgement of Muchendu's argument that it's fine. This is what the shelf is like.
Yes. Yes.
But possibly because maybe this is stock that was there, and therefore it has to be cleared so that we get the stock out of the cheap maize and all that. So even in the process of reporting, they are these things that we're keen to note. For instance, what it is that you're arguing. So I think, again, it would be misplaced for you to say that it was selective kind of an approach.
It was selective because of what you just said. That the media should have actually said, one, the process has begun.
And I'm saying that
which
they have
is
said
that's why I'm acknowledging that. Which was not said. It was not said that now we have started these steps. Media, what we used to call, there used to be something called investigative journalism.
Right.
Investigative journalism would then go to these other media houses and other millers and find out what is this that Ajab and Umi have done. Because Umi yesterday was around 155, Ajab was 169. What is this that they have done that is different? You get?
Yeah.
That we have not been given that because the spin was prices remain at 200 even after the president said.
But that was
the Secondly, by the way, we have this is a free economy. It's a liberal economy, free choice. Meaning, I can go to Java for coffee over 250 per cup, and I still can go to Kibandasku for coffee of 150. We have variety of ungas on the shelf. I can actually go into that shop and I take X, ukula ugalia X. So even if it went low, even below 150, I will still go for
that brand.
Because
and I want to know whether quality is
what we must agree that Kenyans have evolved in economic stature that we vary. There are those who want unga for unga's sake at our price. Okay. Go for Ajab and Umi, it's available.
But that is
they said unga has not come down. No.
Urgently,
but the other question.
Allow us to come back on that after this quick short break.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wakati mwingine kama weekend, mimi najiachilia.
Hata ukumbuki hii story.
Nikifika watu wangu wakinipokea na kupokeleka.
Umeset the mood.
Nimeset the mood. Naweza kupokeleka. Nikitumai kwamba mzima popote pale ulipo, nikikukaribisha katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi. Jina langu Elizabeth Mutuku, na katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi tunakupa nafasi kutangamana nao kila siku ya Alhamisi kuanzia saa 1:30 kuendelea siku nyingine. Tutapatana papa hapa umjue kiongozi mwingine.
Jiunge nasi toka hapa hadi ufuoni mwa bahari. Meli yetu itakapotua nanga kwa uhondo ribo ya riwaya hii mwisho wa kosa. Monica.
It's early morning in Maralal. Start your morning informed, educated, entertained, and above all, know your country. From the beautiful plains of Samburu County to the skyscrapers of Nairobi, Morning Cafe certainly got you covered. Indeed, a beautiful place to watch and certainly a moment of understanding and knowing your country. Indeed, to the remotest parts of every county.
Join me, Linda Alela, every weekday from 6 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
The diversity of Kenya's wildlife has garnered international fame.
This is a pellets that we give to the tourists, the giraffes. We ration because we don't want the giraffes to eat too much of this. We want them to have more of the natural browse.
We may not always get the opportunity to go out to see the wildlife, but you'll never miss the opportunity to see it from the comfort of your couch.
This is home to animals that have been found out there either injured, abandoned, or confiscated from people who are
We are back. Allow us to loop in the viewer. Karibu sana. The hashtag is Morning Cafe at Linda_Lela TV 47KE. I don't know whether to call it the Unga politics, but reality is that Kenyans are in dire need of, getting to see the high cost of living going down. When you're talking about Unga, which is our staple, I think it is a subject that really is dear to our hearts. And so as we get to this very conversation, let's expound it further. Gentlemen, I request that we are, a little bit brief, so we all get a balanced aspect of this. We come back to you, Senior.
No, there's one that, Linda, you must appreciate. We have economic sabotage going on at the moment. Yes. And one is led by Azimio. Two is led by the former.
Why is it that you still want to have a conversation with Azimio if you know very well that they are leading?
Yeah, that's why we want to.
You want to tame them?
We are not talking about another subject as we are talking about the selection panel, which we want to streamline, and that's why where we are. Because these other issues are moving targets. For example, right now we have over 16,000 metric
48,000
metric tons of maize that is coming in, and rice, a lot of rice is coming. Soon we are not. This is not going to be. It's a moving target. It's not going to be a topic. And in fact, if they don't do that very fast, by mwezi wa nane, like kwetu mwezi wa saba, people are harvesting beans. And by mwezi wa nane we have more maize. When they were having sufurias, when they are having sufurias on the streets, we were actually tilling land. That's why you didn't see demonstrations in Bungoma, in Kakamega, in Wasingishu, in Trans Nzoia. We were busy on the land. So, and we are going to have a lot of food. We are not going to have a business for all this. In Nyandarua, with this rain, the potatoes are coming and cabbages and all. And this is a moving target. Is no longer going to be
Is that not what every other Kenyan wants right now? And Kiprono anasema, please, waambie wajibu swali yangu. Mbona sasa unga ishuke chini, alafu tupate chumvi.
That's where I was going. I was going there by saying, that's why I was saying, all this is economic sabotage. Gentlemen and ladies, we know this country, whenever it doesn't rain, the cost of production of power goes up. We haven't had rains about 5 seasons. And that is anybody's interpretation. When all the rain is back and our dams are full and we are going to go back to the situation. And the EP, what we call the regulators of energy and what have EPRA, have always done that. Whenever we get it at a cheap price, they will come down. Like for example, the turbines that are run by fuel are all going to have cheap fuel. We have over 20 billion worth of petrol products that have just landed. It's coming into our machine, into our pumps. We are going to have cheap fuel. The production, cost of production of energy is going to come down, and everything is going to go down. I want to retaliate that what is important at the moment, and what the president invited the opposition into talks about, is actually the formulation of the IBC selection panel, so that we have the commissioners, so that we have this early, for the first time, let's have this early discussion, earlier in the term, than when we do it to rush Kina Cherera at the last minute.
And that really is what the Constitution envisions.
Yes.
Yes.
Even the report.
To sum it up on this.
Collins?
Yes, Collins. Yes, Collins. Kiprono.
Me, I will not hide my face in the sand.
Yeah.
The government has to deliberately, and specifically the Minister of Energy, they have to deliberately deal with a well-inclined cartel in Kenya Power.
Okay.
Kenya Power currently is at the mercies of cartels, and that's the truth. I'll tell you, we have two kinds of cartels that have balkanized Kenya Power. One of the cartels is a cartel calling itself Independent Power Producers. These are people who own private companies and they sell their electricity production to Kenya Power to supply. Have you noted that while Kengen is selling 1 unit at 25 shillings, the Independent Power Producer is selling 1 unit to Kenya Power at 192 shillings. There's a difference of almost 165 in how much the unit cost from Kengen, which is a government, almost fully owned government parastatal, vis-a-vis the Independent Power Producers. Number two, cartel number two is the cartel that supplies transformer to Kenya Power. We have 6 registered suppliers of Kenya Power in the country with transformers. 3 of them are indigenous. I can't remember the name of all of them, but we know we have a company like Kem Power. We have another company from Tanzania that is now owned by East African Cables. These are companies, and we have another company that has now been auctioned because Kenya Power has 3 companies that are registered with a CL12 here, but they do not produce transformers from scratch. They produce transformers and they bring. And they are selling transformers to Kenya Power at almost over 200% in their quote. We have local producers who cannot be given an opportunity to supply to Kenya Power because this cartel is inclined. Now, when we talk about the cost of power in the Republic, there are 2 things. The cartels in Kenya Power have to be dealt with. And then number 2, the government has also to look at the, the charges. That is what the tax the government is collecting on energy. They have to review it and see whether it is actually making that Kenyan who almost has nothing continue to pay more.
Moshendu, how long until this is done? Because the government or the president walks in and during the swearing-in ceremony, and I stand corrected. I was trying to say this is yesterday, but somebody else says that that is not what the president said. But he said, once I put this down, we swing into action. And he reminds those of you that have brothers who are cartels, that have sisters who are cartels, that now hiyo story yao imeisha. So
that is why
how long until
that is why I've said at some point you have to draw the line as someone who values what this nation is all about, and call government out that they have to deal with the issues of Kenya Power and what have you. I, as an individual who is a consumer of Kenya Power product, I have joined an organization that has been registered for electricity consumers, and we are already in court. We have taken Kenya Power to court. We have stopped the new tariffs that they actually gazetted the other day. Because let's face fact. You cannot become a sycophant of government that you fail to see where they are not going right. One of the things that the government has to drastically and quickly deal with is the cost of power. It is the cost. I want to see the day where we have the energy, the gas production get back to the regulation of EPLA, because gas has not been regulated. That is why today is at 2200, tomorrow is at 2800, shooting with 600. So let's face the fact that as government continues to do things and to deliver to Kenyans, where we feel there is luxury, there is a lot of unseriousness and there is a lot of laziness in pushing that agenda, I will tell you, if the government does not clean Stima Plaza here in Nairobi, we are going to be in a mess, because even those who are applying electricity are being taken through a very serious, well-orchestrated conmanship that you can stay there for 4 or 5 months without getting a quotation. And when you get a quotation, you get a quotation that is so abbreviated, you cannot be able to meet it. So government has to do that, and that one, I call them out.
Linda, let me speak as an active citizen. And also speak as a non-shareholder, if you know what I mean. So as a non-shareholder,
we are also speaking as a non-shareholder.
No,
I don't.
At least the way Kenyans know it from this government is some are shareholders, others are non-shareholders.
So I continue to say, let him not present his argument as if Personally, I don't hold any position in government.
Really, I don't think he was referring to
No.
He's not referring to you. He's just alluding to what it is that the deputy president said.
If you are a good Register student and you are sitting with your head, you know what he's alluding to.
Peter Moshendu has told us that when the president was talking about this unga, he was right next to his car.
That's why I'm
there's that feeling
am speaking.
Because I'm in Kiambu, he was in my area.
Okay.
Proceed.
I'm bringing my point home.
Okay.
As an active citizen, it is good to explain to me if you are a government official or if you are a Kenya Kwanza supporter, to make me understand from my position that there is a cartel who has been in this energy sector for a long time. And in that long time, I was paying 1,000 and I was given 63 units. With those cartels inside, all of them getting their cut. I was paying 1,000 and I am getting 63 units. Now the new government has come in, who has removed cartels. And on 23rd of February or January, one of them, I think it was either January or February, my president wakes up in the morning, goes to address the media and says, I assure Kenyans, that is including non-shareholders and shareholders, that the power prices will never go up from now, going forward. Do you have that clip? I think you do.
We should be having it somewhere in the archives.
So, getting into today, I am paying 1,000 and it is now 38 to 40 units. With the government who told me it was the cartels who the other regime brought in that messed up the power space. So when the power space or the energy sector was messed up with cartels, I was paying 1,000 for 63 units, which would take me for a whole month or more. Now, with a new government, which is purely given from heaven, are removing cartels, and I'm now paying 1,000 for 38 units. Explain to me that as a man living in Kenya to understand, because the ways of a rich man is completely mysterious to a poor man. We do not understand as non-shareholders. We completely don't understand. If you ask us, we want the cartels back. Because with cartels inside taking their own shares, we were still paying.
Let's allow senior comment.
Explain to me that to understand.
A quick rejoiner. Two things has happened as the last government was exiting. One, there's something in Kenya Power called limit charges. These are money that is set aside in the budget to help and reduce the cost on behalf of Mwananchi. The Jubilee government, as it was going out, removed rebate charges. Number two, Kenya Power was also getting subsidy in terms of selling tokens to Kenyans. Again, as the government of Uhuru Kenyatta was exiting and we were starting the new financial year there is nothing like subsidy that was given. And again, this subsidy they were giving to Kenyans to buy tokens at a cheaper cost were loans taken from local consortiums that were very expensive, that are having us as Kenyans now be paying in excess of 100 billion every month in terms of interest to local loans. So let us not just
but then
give lip service to the whole thing.
Maybe that's the problem with what it is. Okay, maybe that's why then Odede says, why is it that then you stand on the podium and tell us that power will not shoot up? You have not looked at all this
Exactly.
I mean, why not then come and tell us?
Would the president, knowing all that Moshendu knows, stand on the podium and promise us that going forward, it will never. It means either somebody at the Ministry of Energy misled the president and that person should be fired.
Okay, here we are.
Why are you not sure he was fired?
First of all, let's be slow. We are in a society that is very litigious. Some of the MOUs entered into by the IPP and the government. Some of them were entered into long time even when Raila was Minister for Energy, when Kiraitu was Minister for Energy, when Engineer Nyoike was PS, when Engineer Njoroge was PS. Some of those things, when this government was coming in, there was hope that things were plain. You can just go in.
In fact, some were signed by Engineer Njoroge when he was the director. MD,
you thought that you come in and you just say terminate. So they have ramification on our system. You go stop a contract that is signed for a period of time, you pay for it. So it has to go through the parliament and processes so that you are able to get a law.
I'm just curious. I'm curious.
That's number one.
I'm curious, Senior. How much could the current deputy government be knowing about all this?
But that's what he said when he got in the swearing in at Kasarani. Many of you castigated him for saying the plain truth, that we have gotten into a rotten system.
And that is okay. That is okay.
Yes.
How much is he involved this time around that we would say the deputy president then was not involved? Because if we were to refer to the previous government, we cannot help.
All right. We know, all of us, that the first term of Jubilee government, our deputy president was hands-on. By 2018, our deputy president remained a deputy president on paper.
All right.
And it became a handshake. It became a handshake government. The deputy de facto was Raila Amolo Odinga, and his president was Uhuru.
Fair enough.
So I was making the point.
Yes.
So those MOUs have a legal ramification. They cannot be out and done overnight.
Yeah.
We are talking about a government that has been in office barely six months. And I have been on this show and I've told you, Linda, whether this woman I've married is willing to give me children, however much she's willing, it has to wait 9 months. Hata ukitaka kuzaa, unataka kunizalia, lazima utangoja. We are now interrogating.
But at least there is hope that yes, unless something else happened.
Yes,
so that means that perhaps they're not.
Pregnancy is in the planning. You see, the Mzungu tells you that if you plan to fail,
if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Yeah.
We are in a planning session.
Okay.
We're looking at what was happening then. Many of the problems we are having, like even the caller was alluding to. Most of the problem right now we are having, and Dr. Ndi talked about it. Most of those short-term, very expensive loans that Uhuru ran into to get secure money to pay salaries so that we look like we are stable. The concessions, the what we call those rebates, the money that all that. Now it's coming to fruition.
How different will it be when the papers and generally the story that is there is that then there's debt headache as Kenya seeks new Eurobond. There's that conversation on please raise we're going back to Parliament, kindly raise the debt ceiling. We're going back there and we're saying no more loans. Before you know it, then we're also trying to seek for more loans.
See what we are saying. We want what we are seeking right now is to plug in into what the loopholes. Instead of because we have said crowd out the government out of the local finance system. You go into these banks and you get cheap, expensive short-term loans that mature very fast. You would rather get a Eurobond, you'd rather get an IMF, a World Bank loan that has a longer period with very, very, very friendly terms of payment than going into our banks here and the bonds and what have you that have very short maturity terms, which are now crowding out even the Kenyans. But I wanted to also say that the consumers of our power must also notice. In fact, there was a report in Parliament where they were saying the whole system, supply system, is rusty, is old. is rusty. We are talking about 60 years. Some of them have been in for a long time. What the Jubilee government and the governments that have been before did not repair the system. Now it is becoming costly at this hour. So who is in power? Is Kenya Kwanza now. But the problems were, like the loans are maturing now, that were taken by Kibaki, by Moi, by Kibaki, by Uhuru, are now maturing. So most of those things are starting to pain us now.
Okay.
So we want to tell Kenyans, by the way, and I don't fear declaring. I am I'm a shareholder. So Moshendu fears about it. I am a shareholder, and I am saying,
you better hear that he's saying he's a shareholder.
6 months. It has been 6 months of planning. 8 months. Even Honorable Kuria was on the set saying the other day, we have been planning. It has been 6 months. The sabotage that we are now seeing of people who did not see themselves out of power, they are out of power. They did not see themselves watching, they are now watching. But all this, the rains have come. God, we prayed. They refused the prayers. We have prayed. The rains have come. We are going to have power.
Let's try and power. Yes.
We have Mafuta now has landed. It's coming into the pumps. We have maize coming in. We are going to have cheap food. We have nothing. A problem. The problem is those who are on the streets and they are refusing to go and plant and till their land. They are the same ones who will have sufurias. By the way, who is this person with a packet of unga in the rural? Why would you have somebody in Migori, in Homa Bay, and in Siaya with sufurias on the head, and yet they should have bananas and maize in their farms?
All right, I will play you this clip. If it happens, towards the positive, I'll play you this clip.
Please.
If it doesn't,
please
I will play you this
hold
clip.
me on this.
Linda, let me speak for non-shareholders here. Quick one. He acknowledges that some of these things were done, or some of these loans were taken as far back as Raila was Minister for Energy. Do you know when Raila was Minister for Energy? That is far, far back.
That's when he signed.
Let me now. It means these are things that were there. So how then does the argument that this government cannot deal with these things because some of them are rooted back? How did you campaign? Did your president now know these things were actually there? Was he not deputy president? Was he not a member of parliament all those years you are talking about? And if these things were ratified by parliament and these signatures were put, they were authorized by government to get into this contract. Was your president not a member of parliament in Eldoret North then? Why do you argue as if he just came from honeymoon from somewhere else and got into power only to realize that there were all these loans? Did he not sit down and say, I want to be president, and when I go to become president, this is what I want to fix in the energy sector as a president of Kenya, and this is where the problem is. This is what I'm going to touch to reduce or to just wait. No, you had your time. Just wait. I don't know why you're jittering. You need I am just getting into. I have not even completed. So don't be in a rush.
But cut to chase.
So all these things, for you to become a member of parliament right now, you would diagnose the constituency and say, when I get into power as a member of parliament for this area, this is what I am going to do on education. This is what I am going to do on these other things. So you are simply telling us in your argument that the whole Kenya Kwanza government did not know the problem they were getting into because they completely had no idea how the previous government has been run, where the problems were, and what they are going to do to reverse them immediately. To knock out your argument, We found a government which Moi had run for 24 years with the problems that you cannot equate to the problems we are having now. But when Kibaki and his team got into power and they promised Kenyans free education, they did not lament to us 6 months later that we are just 6 months. Even if you want to give birth, it is not possible. You have to wait for 9 months. Wait. Why are you in a rush?
No, we have to go to this.
In 2 weeks' time, because elections then were done in December and January, kids were in school. Were we not having free primary education? We had. After a 24 years economy that was worse than this, they did not come back 7 months later to tell Kenyans we didn't know all this were happening. Then lastly, you are crying foul every day that this government is just 6-7 months. The same 6 months government have depleted the budget of State House, which was budgeted by Parliament at 8.4 billion. Uhuru used to use that 8.4 billion
for
a whole year.
To that,
they have depleted it, and they have taken up to January, up to February, they have taken 9.5 billion out of 8 and they have raised it to 15
with
in
justification.
6 months.
With justification.
So 6 months is enough for them to deplete the budget and even go to review it to another 50% or 100%. But 6 months is never enough to deliver anything to Kenya. But when you are swearing in, ukibeba Biblia kuweka chini, things will be okay.
Have you
That's
failed
a lie
to
that we
exude
cannot accept.
confidence to the people of Kenya? Have you failed to exude that? And I think let's pick this one that we speak about the fact that we all know it has to take 9 months before then we celebrate this bundle of joy. But in the process, there's the pregnancy, and therefore we cross fingers and hope and believe that then, of course, tomorrow we're going to have a baby unless the unusual happens. Have you failed to exude confidence into the minds of the people of Kenya?
Linda, there is no magic in resolving the mess that was the Jubilee government.
Okay.
When he talks about the president and the deputy taking up the entire budget, he needs to tell us how much of it we found. How much of it we found that would have been spent on the office of the president. Now, that is beside the point. We are talking of a government that Linda has taken up the work. You remember a few weeks ago you were talking about the salaries being raised. What Uhuru government, and he must understand that when Kibaki took over power from Moi, he may have found a messed up government, but he did not find a pile of loans to tunes of trillions. Do you know Uhuru, from when Uhuru Kenyatta took government from the President Kibaki, he has borrowed more than 7-point-something trillion over the years. The solution by Uhuru Kenyatta as the president was, if there is a problem with fuel, we borrow money, we pay subsidy, and we keep the Kenyans quiet. If there is a problem with this, in fact, in the budget of 2021-2022, Uhuru contravened the Public Finance Management Act, Section 15C, Part 2, that says that government cannot borrow money to fund what is called recurrency expenditure. Uhuru went out and borrowed 161 billion to pay salaries. And that is one of the two instances where Uhuru has gone to borrow money from local consortium to fund what we call the currency expenditure against the law, which attracts a very high interest, and it is what has risen our interest into a tune of 100 billion shillings per month. These are accumulative issues that we'll find that this government has to deal with before it can actually move forward. These messes, we cannot hide in the face and say that they are not there. Nonetheless, one of the things that drives a nation anywhere in the world, and that is when people like Obama rallied on the clarion hope of we can do it. It is not that we do not know there are problems, but you have to inspire Kenyans that despite
have you
the
done
challenge,
that? Hence my
that
question.
is what we are doing.
That?
I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
The government comes and the first act is they provide fertilizer to Kenyans.
Okay.
God, in his
that has a lot of
mysterious ways, works miracles and the rain.
And including the latest report from Parliament.
That's what I'm saying.
As they were complaining about accountability on the 15 billion that was accorded
that
to
is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The accountability on how the fertilizers was purchased is one thing. The distribution and net getting to farmers is another thing. So
the quality is another.
So the government has supplied fertilizer. The rain has poured. Kenyans went to shambas and planted. But the media is still hung out in Nairobi to discuss about how fertilizer is not reaching people.
Let me finish. What is your communication team doing to undo what it is that the media is doing in this era of social media? Yes.
To interrogate my point.
Yeah.
I have not seen a media that is going out there in Eldoret and in other large-scale cereal farmers to track down whether they have gotten the fertilizer and how it is.
Then Moshendu, you're not reading the papers or you're not watching news? For sure.
No.
That one I can tell you with confidence.
Listen. I am reading the papers and the papers have been quoting people, not farmers.
I hope you read the papers to the county beat.
Let me tell you, I interrogate. When I say this, I say it with a lot of confidence. Other than speaking to speculators.
And I with confidence as well.
Other than speaking to the speculators in the fertilizer business, the brokers in the fertilizer business, the unsatisfied politicians with how this thing. Because let me tell you,
that might be misplaced.
The biggest broker of fertilizer over the years has been the politicians.
Yes.
That is the truth.
Let me take it away from you.
No.
I have to because of the question of time.
So the point I was trying to do across, rather than the fourth estate sticking to its course of informing Kenyans and mirroring what is happening, part of the media, and I will not accuse TV47, I have been here over the years, but part of the media has become part of the civil society and has decided to take the role of...
We have the code of ethics and conduct that guides us, and it should be factual.
The media has decided to take the role of oversighting government, and it is not the role of the media to oversight government.
And I'm not acting as
the
well
role of the
media
media is to inform, be truthful, be not to be biased, and to be focused on the truth. However they agree the truth is, they tell the truth. Whether government is going wrong, it is the role of the media to
I should tell you the struggles that sometimes we get to get this one that are supposed to speak with authority.
Yes, if the government is doing right, say it. But what have you seen? When we give fertilizers, the media will worry about the negativity of that whole project. When the president says the cost of hunger will go down, the media will put in an angle of trying to disqualify what the government
I hope you watched the CS. I hope you watched the CS for agriculture.
So the
I hope you watched the interview.
The government has been doing its responsibility. That is one. Create what is called a physical discipline. That is why, despite the salaries being great, the president did not get the temptations of going to borrow money from the bank to pay. This is the government that is saying, as we are buying maize to deal with the current issue, we have given our farmers enough fertilizer and quality seedlings to be able to get a bumper harvest and lower the cost of living.
And forget and overlook the rights of the civil
and company
servants.
and cahoots have been used to the procrastination that was the Jubilee government led by Uhuru and fully supported by Raila Odinga that believed that everything can be solved with subsidy and get more loans to feed into what we call currency expenditure.
Dr. Kakai, current expenditure, this one goes straight to you. This one goes direct to you. Dr. Kakai says, Linda, don't mention, and so much so about this, but tell the UDA people to stop telling Kenyans about Hitler that died 70 years ago. About Hitler that died 70 years ago. Like, you do not come back and tell us, oh, this is what happened, this is what happened, you're a historian, and therefore you need to know that we need to be progressive. Actually, he mentions Sunday is a historian. He should know this.
I am a historian. I can tell you, and a political scientist. Let me, and on that note, that's why I want to debunk my brother Odede is saying that the MPs and all people who are out of government know what the government does. We have separation of power in this country. We have the executive, we have the legislature, we have the judiciary. What executive has the details and what have you, until you get into the executive, you will not get all the details. So there are files and things and what is in the treasury and what is the concessions and the agreements that have been signed by government that are in the executive. So you have...
Where DP Ruto was.
Can I?
Well, he was part of the president. We're still waiting.
Was.
And I agree with you. We're still waiting for the SGR
we
contract.
have agreed,
yes.
like for example, the SGR, that when we got into the government is when we got to know what is going on. And by the way, we have agreed that Ruto was in the first 5 years of Uhuru Ruto. In the second term, Ruto, and the media has not been kind on this. They have not come out to say this expressly, that Ruto was a bystander in the second term, and it was a handshake government. And even Raila, Uhuru Kenyatta said that many times. He said, we now have a friend and a partner. So that is the partner that they dread the government with. You remember Akina Ishungwa and others being kicked out of, Akina Murkomen being kicked out of government oversight bodies and all of that. And many people were sacked, by the way, that were allied to government. The sources of information were cut. Allied to Ruto by then. So they were replaced.
So let's give you until
that
when?
is number one.
Until when?
Number two, the good evaluation is a year or two. Actually, let me tell you, I'll surprise you.
As we sum it up.
I'll surprise you. The World Bank, the IMF, the economists, before these elections, were on the set. And they said, whoever takes this government, whether it's Raila or Ruto, and it is quoted, whether it's Raila or Ruto, it will take up to 2 years for them to settle this economy. Why? The damage was deep. The loans were many. These subsidies were fake, and people are not being told what was going on. Contracts like the highway, the overway, this road, the expressway were not clear. The SGR, some of the signs and commitments in the SGR were not open. So, and the IMF particularly and the World Bank and most of the economists were very blunt, and they say whoever takes this government, whether it's Ruto or Raila, it will take up to almost 2 years to clean up the mess.
And even then, we are saying to the same.
We are saying it will, for us, it will take less.
All right.
We are working. Now, let me say this. The other next evaluation and monitoring, if you want to do a very good monitoring and evaluation, you will take, like for example, on fertilizer. You can't go on speculation of Mbadi that it has been misplaced. You will wait for the
full cycle, of course, to go through.
Yes. Can we wait and see the harvest? Can we wait and see the harvest and see whether the seeds reached the farmers, the subsidies were effective, the fertilizer got to the farms? When
so don't lower whistle in the event that you feel that something is amiss?
No, right now what we are doing is speculation. Otherwise, by the way, they don't even have the facts. That's why they have called upon the Auditor General to go out and look for the facts.
He sits in the public accounts
supposing the Auditor General comes back with a report to say everything was okay.
It makes us happy.
But it will have interfered. No. Let me finish this. By the way, when you talk about Kibaki and the implementation of the primary education, you must also know it was before the 2010 Constitution. We had an overpowerful president. He could order from State House, and things happens. He could reallocate monies whenever he wanted. But even when he was doing that, 3 months down the line, who was his problem? Who was Kibaki's problem even in implementing the NAC manifesto? It was Raila Amolo Odinga. He was already out on the streets with the MOU thing. The same thing he's doing to Ruto right now. It's the same thing he did with Kibaki. And he led it all the way into 2007 into the post-election violence. It is the same. So my brother was saying I'm an historian. I am a student of history. That the same man who has had problems with the father and himself had a problem with Kenyatta, Jomo Kenyatta. He had a problem with Moi. In 1982 coup, he had a problem with Kibaki. 3 months into power,
Zeras,
he had a problem
with you, and we come to you.
He had a problem with Uhuru Kenyatta. He is the same person having a problem with Ruto. He is the same problem.
Wait a minute.
He is the problem of Kenya.
Zeras seems to agree with what it is that you say. He says the Azimio team is out to scuffle government efforts to stabilize the country. It is important that then they are toned down so that we move forward. Right. The same person writes to say they have spent time politicking instead of working. Now this is Kenya Kwanza. Hitler used to blame media and yet he was not planning. Sande knows the communications strategy of UDA has died. That is why they condemn the media so much. So that is subject to debate. Close it.
Linda, you know, I am sitting between two men who are supporting government. So I need enough time to put in my points across, because that is now equal representation. So in the class where Sunday attended of history, he missed to understand that if Raila was a problem in Kibaki's government 3 months after elections, Kibaki still achieved everything.
By himself.
Wait,
did he?
I don't know why you don't listen when I'm speaking, and when you're speaking,
just qualifying.
I keep quiet.
I'm supporting you. Actually.
This discipline is not in UDA.
I'm
completely.
supporting.
It is not.
It is supposed to be in the civil society, not in.
You are now not civil society. So why is it possible that when you are speaking, I am quiet completely through the time, and when I speak, you can never sit down and
let
listen?
us acknowledge that in a debate there are times where people will interject.
Yeah. But why is it not possible with me? Is it because I don't know how to interject?
Time is moving.
It is just in discipline.
Proceed.
I mean, you just need to be a gentleman.
That is well.
You are taking time now. Eh?
So when Kibaki got into power, you also needed your history to tell you that 2 weeks after his election, children were in school, despite Raila being his problem in 3 months' time. He did not look into Kenyans' eyes and start telling us how Raila is a problem and that is why he's not going to achieve anything. So that is hogwash, put it aside.
It was an overall president.
Wait! Goodness.
Proceed.
What are we having on set today?
Proceed.
So he did not sit down to tell us how Jaramogi was a problem to Kenyatta, how Jaramogi was a problem, and that is why he cannot achieve what he promised Kenyans to achieve. We are putting precedent to his own words. When I take power, in this number of days, I shall achieve this. When we ask that, you cannot come to set and tell us Jaramogi was a problem to Kenyatta, and so that is why Ruto cannot achieve what he promised Kenyans to achieve when he puts the Biblia down. So that is all hogwash, put it aside. Come to tell us that this has been achieved and this has not been achieved for this reason. Let me come to Mushendu's the loans that he's talking about. We need to tell Kenyans the truth, Linda. The truth is, when Kibaki left power, Kenyans had 1.8 trillion, something like that, in terms of loans. Uhuru took power in 2013. By the time handshake happened, and Mushendu will bear me witness, when Uhuru and Raila lobbied their members of parliament to go and raise the debt ceiling, it was hitting 7. So Uhuru wanted the debt ceiling to go to 9 trillion if you are covering all this. So it means between 2013 and 2017, Uhuru and Ruto, who are wearing the same shirts, the same tie, had borrowed between 1.8 to 7 trillion. So when we are in a mess now, we are having Eurobond reported today being, it is hitting 10 years, it is maturing. Where did those monies go? That is where we have a problem, because the load of this, so the second term of Uhuru could have said, we can clearly say, has done 2 trillion, between 7 trillion and 9 trillion where the debt ceiling iliwekwa. So this 2 trillion, most of it has gone into COVID, because we know 2019 late 2019 to 2020 and part of 2021, the whole world dealt with COVID issues. And this is where major chunk of this 2 trillion should have gone to. But the trillion between 1.8 to 7 trillion,
Where did it go? Was Ruto not in the executive? He was. Was Ruto not the body of Uhuru Kenyatta? He was. Were they not sitting on the same desk to make decisions? They did. Were they not having majority in parliament? They had. So where did this money go? That is where the problem of Kenya is today, because those are the loans that are maturing. Linda, it may interest you to know that the loans that were taken during the second term of Uhuru Kenyatta, some of them have not matured, but a few have matured. So let me tell you, the mess Kenya is in is a mess that was created between 2013 and 2017. That is where Raila and the team That is where Raila and the team asked, where did 250 billion euro bond went to? The treasury then told Kenyans that ililetwa tukamwaga kwa hii kikapu iko na pesa mingi, so we don't know any project that was done. When we are feeling the heat now, the likes of Sunday will turn around and tell you, oh, handshake is the problem. Handshake is not the problem. The handshake between Ruto and Uhuru between 2013 and 2017 got us into this mess, and Ruto cannot run away, and you cannot come to the set and start telling us how Jaramogi was a problem with Kenyatta, how Moi was a problem with who. That is hogwash. Get out of that.
All right, we have a very minimal time to look into this, and sometimes next then we'll be looking at the debt ceiling and how it has grown over years. Jubilee government now coming to this very one, but allow us to shelve us that because of the interest of time. Moshendo, you have 30 seconds to close this. I know you all are surprised that we've not talked about the bipartisan talks, but let's wait for what plays out, in tomorrow's negotiation. Then we can have, some ground.
A very quickly rejoinder what Odede has said. One, you cannot equate the factionality and the quickness under which Kibaki operated to start free primary education with the president of today. One, ask yourself why Kibaki became president and in 2 weeks kids were in school. We had not institutionalized the process of what is called supplementary budgets in our constitution. Today is public participation. Today the formation of budget is not the same way when the Minister of Finance would appear in Parliament and the President would come and he will lead budget policy. There is a very distinct process that is anchored in law of reallocating money that is meant for something. So if Ruto wanted to come and do something, he would supplementary budget, by the way, would only reallocate money within the development and the budget votes that were in the original budget.
Let's be conscious of time.
You cannot introduce a new budget vote in the budget currently. So we need to look at William Ruto and how he's going to do his new budget that will be passed by Parliament soon. Having said that, I would urge Kenyans to be patient, because one of the things that William Ruto has had to do was to take Kenya out of a hole and bring it to a level playing ground and start building it, going up.
Let's leave it at that,
Yes.
Mushendu. Let's leave it at that in the best interest of time. 30 seconds.
For me, one, I want to, there is this talk about Azimio saying that they want to take Koome to ICC. And they want to take Rigathi to ICC because they are, and the police to ICC because they are defending us who are opposed to the destruction of our businesses, of our children going to school, of making money and stabilizing this economy, of getting people who are working in Nairobi and in the towns to get M-Pesa to send to the farmers to continue tilling their land in the rural, because that's the money they require. And now when a whole Monday and a whole Thursday is closed, then it means there's no money in the rural. And they all are doing that in pretext of Article 1, that the responsibility of taking up matters has now been taken over by the citizens. So they go to the street and do it themselves. We want to tell them that they don't have the monopoly of Article 1. If then we don't have the police and the security to protect us, we also citizens are going to apply Article 1 to protect our properties and to protect our businesses and to protect our children and make sure that the economy runs. Article 1 is not only for Azimio. Article 1 is for all citizens. So if we have to suspend, the police from working, and the executive from working, and the president from working, we may have to apply Article 1 and suspend and do it as a sovereign to protect our
I do
so
not know
if
what
they
you
go
mean
back,
exactly.
if they go back to the street, the way they have threatened, it means other citizens shall apply Article 1 and go to the streets.
I will not want to overread that statement.
That is, and why I'm saying that.
Close.
Yeah, we want Azimio to stay in Parliament and debate with the other members of Parliament.
Fair enough.
In a bipartisan way and get solutions. And lastly, very last.
No. It is 8:32. 8:30 we're supposed to close. Unfortunately, already I'll not even allow you anything.
Oh, come on, Linda, I have to say
30
one
seconds.
thing. I think Sunday is struggling so much. One quick thing. Mushendu, if the Constitution then allowed Kibaki to do this, Ruto must have known that Constitution now will not allow him to do things quickly, and so he does not need to tell Kenyans, nikiweka Biblia chini, this will happen.
Okay, fair
he
enough.
knew that.
He knew that.
Linda, to Sunday, there is no death penalty in our Constitution and in our court. If you kill, even if you are a police, you are taken to the courts and you are charged.
Okay,
so there is nothing like police is defending anyone.
Okay, we have to close. And someone agrees that ICC does not deal with the tear gas incidents. On that,
Thank you.
Raila Odinga is
Very
wrong.
well
So
informed
perhaps
Kenya.
we need to revisit.
ICC
Gentlemen, thank you
deals
so
with
much.
death.